because when I came home after 8 years, I paroled out to my brother's walk-in closet.
I still got 3 years of parole left.
My name is Andrea Luzon, Legacy Liberator. I'm a life coach, I'm an energy healer, I'm a speaker, I'm an author. I started working with Brenda Ringwood and Terrence Leftridge through the Become the Best Speaker course just 8 weeks ago. And I can already tell that I am a more confident stage speaker. I'd love to express the level of practice that we experienced. The team atmosphere in the container was life-changing. The people in that group, the people that you'll be together with they're really going to help you change how you show up as a speaker. So I highly recommend joining the program. Honor yourself. There is a little bit of homework. Let yourself dive into the homework, do the assignments on time, and then show up for every session. It is really going to change your life.
Hello guys, look at who I have here. We have a group today. We're going to do from Felon to Fabulous. I'm going to start right here with Coffee Cup Chuck. 10 years in the pen, in and out of the system. I don't know if he was complete 10 years in the pen, but he completely changed his life around. Then we have our co-host, Isabel Black. You guys know a little bit about her story. Should have been in the pen, never went. Has family in the system. But we have this amazing couple right here. We have Bill Corum and his beautiful wife, Debbie. And Bill was, in the day, he was like this gangster. I mean, he was kind of big time, right? He's known in Kansas City for a beautiful prison ministry that he has. And I think we're just going to turn it over to you and kind of tell a little bit about what it is that you went to prison for, what your life was like. We'll interject some questions, but then my main goal is why you're fabulous.
Oh,
I'd like to know that too.
we just go because we edit, so we just go, we have fun. So we want to know why you're so fabulous, because it's not
you'll
about
have
the
to edit
fun part.
this because I asked if you could change the name because I don't think I am fabulous.
You are fabulous because you have Christ within you.
Amen. Amen.
Mhm.
Well, my story, started, I'm not going to tell my whole story. You've got my book on the screen, right?
Yes, we
I
do.
wrote a book called The Ultimate Pardon, and we've given 125,000 of those away. It's in all 50 states in over 2,700 prisons. And that's really my story. But I always like, a lot of times when I'm in churches, I always start out with Revelation 12:11 says we overcome the enemy by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. And that passage kept me awake at night, because when I read it and I realized that God thinks our testimony is so important that he put it right next to the blood of the Lamb. He didn't put it in the same verse or on the same line, but right next to the blood of Jesus. That's how important our testimony is. And it says we overcome the devil by the blood of the Lamb, the word of our testimony. But I also realize it's more than just our words, because talk is cheap. People can say anything they want to say. And I see men, I've been in prison ministry 35 years. I travel the whole United States, been in other countries doing prison ministry, but mostly in the United States. And I do a lot of prisons every year. Before COVID, I was doing 80 or 90 prisons a year. And I'm back, kind of starting to get back into the swing of things. We're doing a lot of prisons. I was just in a big prison yesterday. But I see men in chapels get up and say, "Oh, hallelujah, I got saved and I'm a Christian now." And when I'm walking out of the prison, I see them buying some dope out in the yard.
Mhm.
And that's their testimony too.
Yeah.
It's not just what we say, but it's how we live our lives, even in secret. And that's how we overcome the enemy, is by the blood of the Lamb, Jesus's blood, and the word of our testimony. The behavior, what word would I use? The actions, there's a
Fruit.
Yeah, the fruits. Our testimony is our life,
It is.
and it's not just our words, but it's how
People see.
it's how we walk. And so,
Stay influenced with.
but I want to overcome the devil today, so I'll share a little bit of my testimony. So, when first, let me back up. I was at a crossroads in my life. We've all been at crossroads in our life, but I was at a real serious crossroads. When I was 18 years old, I stood before a Marine Corps colonel. And he said, "If you don't straighten up," because I'd been in trouble with the Marines, they'd put me on restrictions and different things. And he said, "If you don't straighten up, you'll be in the penitentiary before you're 21 years old." And I laughed in his face. I had a choice right there that could have changed my whole life, but I laughed in his face. And by the time I was 21, I had escaped from a prison. I had been locked up in 10 different states, traveling on the diesel therapy with the feds,
Mhm.
going from county jail to county jail,
All in chains, right?
handcuffs, leg irons, waist chains, and sometimes in a black box with the U.S. Marshals. And so when I got out of prison, I had two goals: never go back, which a lot of inmates say that. I'll never go back. But I had two goals: never go back and never get caught. And I didn't have any intentions of being a law-abiding citizen. I intended to break the law, but I was never going to get caught again. And so, like I was telling our host earlier, I said, a lot of the guys I ran with over the last 35 years that I go to prisons with today, they've done a lot of times, 10 years, 15 years. The guy that was sitting next to me today in church just got out about 9 weeks ago. He just did 40 calendars. 40 calendars. And I've got a lot of friends that did a lot of time and they're serving the Lord today. Well, I didn't do a whole lot of time. I got a 6-year sentence in the feds. And back then, you got out in a third of your sentence if you did everything right.
Not anymore.
And I know now it's like an 86, it went to 85%. But back then you could get paroled in 1/3 of your sentence. So I got out in 2 years, but I never got caught for 20 more years. And I broke the law every day from as small of things as just petty burglary to international gun smuggling. We were literally, when we were go get cocaine in Bogota in South America, we were sending guns over there that we were buying for $100 in the streets here and selling for $1,000 over there because handguns are illegal in South America. So if I'd ever got caught selling handguns to South America, I would probably never get out of prison, you know? So all the things I did and all the years and years, I always was able to figure out a way to get out, never got caught. And by the time I was 30, I had been nicknamed Crazy Bill by a key mafia figure in Kansas City, Missouri. And I was doing enforcement for the underworld, and I was doing a lot of crazy things. And then I got in a train wreck, and I was facing going back for the rest of my life. I got implicated as being one of the leading cocaine dealers in Kansas City, Missouri. And I was facing a life sentence. And my wife, we had gotten married in 1980, and we were both alcoholics. And I was a drug addict and a drug dealer. She didn't know that at the time. I turned her on to drugs. She became a drug addict. And then one day she came home from work and said, something happened to me. And I said, what happened to you? And she said, a lady prayed with me today. And I gave my life to Jesus, and I'm a Christian now. And I said, so what? And she goes, you're not mad? And I said, I don't care what you do. And she goes, well, what should I do? I said, I don't know, read the Bible, I guess. And she started reading the Bible, and guess what? She fell in love with another man. His name was Jesus. And she joined my mother, who had prayed for me for 39 years, and her and my mother prayed together, and they prayed and prayed. And April 15th, 1983, almost 2 years after she became a Christian, I said, God, if you're real and you can change Bill Corum, I'll live my life for you. And I can tell you, I've never looked back. There's not been one day that I wanted to go back and do more drugs, go back and shoot somebody, go back and beat somebody, go back and steal again, rob again. I've only wanted more of Jesus. And when I came to Christ, I was doing $500 worth of cocaine every day minimum.
Ooh, yourself doing?
Every day minimum.
Ingesting?
Yes, no, not injecting.
Okay.
But my partner and I some days would freebase a whole ounce of cocaine, which was $2,000, because we were two of the leading dealers in the city, so we always had cocaine. It was no big deal. And I would drink 2 quarts of whiskey a day, I'd packs and unfiltered Camels a day, and I'd kiss Debbie goodbye and say, I'll see you tonight, honey, and be gone for 2 or 3 weeks and be with a different woman every day. So today I go in prisons and guys go, they come up to me. I haven't seen them in 2 or 3 years, and they'll walk up to me and go, hey, Bill, I tried God and he didn't work. And I look him in the eye and I say, he didn't work the way you tried him.
Yeah.
If you try him your way, he'll never work. If you try him his way, he'll always work. And they go, well, did he work for you? I said, you know my story, right? Yeah. You read my book? Yeah. I haven't done illegal drugs since 1983. I've not smoked a cigarette since 1983. I've not had a drop of alcohol since 1983. And I've not kissed another woman since 1983. Yeah, he worked for me.
Yes.
He worked for me. And they say, well, how did he work? I said, all in, total surrender. See, we never want to do this when we're criminals. Nobody in the criminal world wants to do this.
Yes.
When I speak in prisons, whether it's 20 men in a chapel or 500 men on a prison yard, I go, how many of you guys wanted to do this when you're in the world? Nobody wanted to do this. And I was no different. And the first time I ever did that was in Leland, Mississippi. I'd escaped from a prison. I was getting me some clothes because I didn't have any clothes. And I was breaking in a clothing store. And I was going up on the roof to go in through the skylight. And I looked down and saw a flashlight coming down that alley. And so I dropped down and I ran the other direction, ran around a corner into the biggest, fattest Mississippi sheriff you've ever seen. And he had a gun this long. And he stuck it right here. And he goes, where are you going, boy? And I said, with you, sir. And that was the first time. But it wasn't the last time. It was 20 years later before I surrendered to Jesus. And in those 20 years, my life just went on a course that nobody wants to talk about. When I was writing my book, I called an old Italian friend of mine. I said, hey, can I use your name in the book, Tony? And he's like, Bill, I don't know, man. And I said, Tony, it's been 30 years. And he said, but doesn't the Bible say a fool tells all? And I said, no, the Bible doesn't say that. And I said, besides that, I'm not telling all, Tony. I ain't telling nothing can get me from a grand jury. I'm just telling part of the story. And so I was able to write the book. And today we put that book in all these prisons, 2,700 prisons. The surveys they've done over the last 15, 20 years say that 20 to 30 inmates will read each book. So when you put a book, if you put that book right there in a prison, 20 to 30 inmates will pass that book around. And I've talked to a lot of inmates and a lot of ex-cons, and they go, that's right. The books get used and torn up. And I've got a picture on my website of a book that a guy sent me, the picture from a prison in Alabama or Mississippi somewhere. And he took a picture of the book because it's laying on a table and so just torn and tattered and looks like it's really only this thick. It's 320 pages, but it looks like it's 500 pages because all pages are all
mangled.
Yeah, the front of the book's all torn up. So that book's got passed around a lot. So that's why we have to keep replacing them. We keep replacing them. We keep sending them in. And God's using that book. And then we got 2 other books we wrote during COVID. One's called Nuggets of Gold by 12 Ex-Cons. It's kind of a little daily devotional. And then the last one we wrote is called Diamonds from the Rough. And I wanted to call it Diamonds in the Rough. And my wife said, honey, we can't call it Diamonds in the Rough. And I said, why? And she said, because it sounds like they're still in the rough. So we called it Diamonds from the Rough. And it's 9 of our closest friends who were in deep darkness, all been to prison. All of them were drug addicts or drug dealers or, just the world's worst. And today they're shining like diamonds. God's using them. And it's just so wonderful.
God's shining through them.
Yeah, and there's 9 of our friends in that book, and then the Nuggets of Gold by 12 Ex-Cons is myself and 11 other people who contributed to make this little devotional up. And so we've got all together between the 3 books, we've given away 225,000 books.
That's amazing.
And it is amazing. And it's just, I think of it and I'm like, God is unbelievable.
I have a story for you about your book.
Because there's no way I could ever print and ship 225,000 books. Only God could do that.
That's right.
Yes, go ahead.
So I was at CCA where I met you, and I met Lisa and Ray there as well too, who are the pastors of this church that we're sitting in, which is Hope City. Go check them out because they could use donations. And I met a girl named Corum Dudley who was there, never been to church before. Now I was a believer who was just deep in sin, kind of living 2 lives, and I got busted. So sitting in a federal holding facility, and I meet this girl named Corum Dudley, never even read a book before in her life. Your book was the first book she had ever completed. And she ended up coming to some Bible studies. She got saved, and she talks about your book being a contributor to that. So I wanted to share that with you.
Oh, thank you.
That was 2014-15 timeframe.
Wow.
See how we changed lives? And you said earlier you wasn't what? You're awesome. Even when you don't know you're fabulous.
That's what makes them fabulous.
That's what makes, because the humbleness, God makes us humble for those reasons. Because when you're humble, you know that you're not being used for what you want. You're being used for what he wants. So you are fabulous.
Thank you. Thank you, brother.
You are. I got a question now. And I'm pretty sure a lot of the audience would probably want to know this question. First of all, I got a question for your wife.
Yes.
What made you stay?
What made me stay? This was my second marriage. And so I came into it extremely wounded. And so it wouldn't have taken much for me to run again. But the Lord got a hold of my life because I met him and I was drinking all the time. Do you want a short answer?
No. We
part of the story.
We want the answer that's going to help someone else.
I was drinking all the time because I had anxiety attacks, and they were so bad that I was seeing a counselor, and he had me on Thorazine. My dad had me on Valiums, and my husband had me on Quaaludes. And so, I was trying to just keep myself together. I wasn't used to this kind of lifestyle. I was used to the alcoholic lifestyle, but not that with the crime. And so what was your question again?
Why'd you stay? What
Thank you.
what gave you the strength?
Okay, so anyway, so I came to the Lord, long story short, I came to the Lord and the Lord delivered me of the anxiety attacks. It was just a miracle. The last time I almost had one, right after I got saved, I almost had one, long story, but the Lord spoke to me for the first time and he said, from now on, I'm going to be your medication. And so that's when, I started pounding Bill with the Bible, oh man, Jesus is so real. You got to know him. And of course, the more I, beat him up with the word, the further he got from me. And so a lot of hurt in my heart, a lot of rejection and stuff. And so that just made me press into Jesus more. And when I was pressing in, at the beginning, it was like I wanted our marriage to last. I wanted to, I didn't want to be like a loser twice. You can't even keep a man, And so my prayers were very selfish. Debbie, God, bring him home because I need somebody to love me. I need somebody to, we had 2 kids at home. His oldest son was living with us, and then my daughter that was, she was 6 by then, and they need a father, and the Lord would bring him home, and he would be worse than when he left, and so it was like, this isn't working real well, I mean, he would come home and I'd have the house a little bit in order spiritually. I started telling the kids they couldn't watch some of the junk we used to let them watch.
Good for you.
And he'd come home and it would be just all rules thrown out. And then when he'd leave, he would just suddenly leave. And here we are again, and I had to clean up the mess. So my prayers started changing. And that's when the Lord started giving me more confidence that it's not just about you, Debbie, needing to have a husband. And my prayer, he started changing my prayers, Lord, whatever. And the lady actually that was discipling me, she told me one time in a pep talk, because I needed several, she said, Debbie, we're talking Bill's eternity. And she said,
It's a big deal.
You can do this. And I'm going, yes, I can. And so my prayers started changing, and I was praying, Lord, don't bring him home unless he comes home saved. And that's a risky thing for a very insecure person who has always relied on other people to tell me I was worthy, that I was somebody important. And obviously I wasn't getting that from him at the time. And let me just interject. He put me in so many risky situations. And I look back now and it's like, oh God, you're so awesome, because his name is William. William means protector. And he never protected me. He put me in harm's way, but now he is my protector. He guards over me. He's just very doting. And it's just like, God, you're so awesome.
He's also now a
You
spiritual
named
leader.
him ahead of time. But anyway, so, God, it was the worse he got. And I can't say I did it sloppy. There was times when I'd go chasing after him and I'd go try and find him, and the Lord made sure that I never did. And of course, the women thing was a big deal for me because my first husband cheated. I knew he was cheating, but he would always deny it. And but God started putting in my heart, scriptures like train up a child in the way that he's to go, and when he's old, he'll not depart from it. He was raised in a Christian home. And it was like I knew that there was something in there. From I don't even know what these are, but, from a child, you've learned the Holy Scriptures, and I knew he did. And so things like that would give me confidence. And then the devil would come and he would go, well, what God has joined together, let no man separate. And then he'd go, God didn't put you guys together. I picked up a guy in a bar. I introduced him. I was dating him. He introduced me to Bill. Our first date, he got drunk. I mean, that was so ungodly. And so the devil used that constantly with me. And then the Lord would give me scriptures like, or he would tell me, if I drew you when you were married, why wouldn't I draw him because you're one flesh? And stuff like that. He'd just keep me going and keep me going. At the very last, it was probably the last few months before he was just way off. He never came home. He wouldn't call me. And I felt so rejected. And the Lord kept telling me, it's shame. It's shame. He's not rejecting you. And I feel like the Lord in the very end gave me a gift of faith, which I wish I had now. It was a very special, I will never forget it. I have not had it since, but I knew because I knew that he was going to come home and he was going to get saved. He was disappearing on his drug partners and everybody. And one of them called me one day and wanted to know if Bill was there. And I said, you won't find him here. You won't find him here. And I said, oh, Charlie, I said, if you only knew, I said, if you were only a Christian, you would know, because I was telling him that Bill was going to get saved. He goes, woman, I am a Christian. No, I'm going, not. Whoops. But anyway, so it was shortly after that he came home and surprised me that he had prayed. And it just blew me away. All my prayers, I was telling my friend Melanie, all these prayers that I prayed and his mom and I sowed into it. I didn't get any of the glory, because when he came home, I was dumbfounded. It was like, oh my gosh, he really did answer my prayer.
So I asked you that question for a reason.
Yeah.
So this lady right here, she adopted this thing with a crown, where she puts that crown on her head and she crowns herself queen.
Oh, amen.
Reason why I asked that question, because sometimes when you're struggling to get over demons, you need someone beside you.
Yeah.
And being beside you, you're dragging that person and you're dragging it. And sometimes people let go because they can't hold on long enough. But then there's some people who have the strength to hold on, and they can't hold on by themselves. So they ask strength from some other source.
Yes.
And when you want that source, it's there. You just got to ask for it. So you are the queen that rescued him.
Yes.
So when you look at it like he did it all on his own, or you look at it like you were waiting for him to come home, it's you. Without you constantly being there, without you forcefully forcing what you really wanted for him, you helped him see what he needed. And now you're sitting right here in the middle as king and queen, and you guys are not only through the life that you went and reliving it every day by telling the story to other people, you guys are helping other people get through. And the guests and the visitors that's watching this, sometimes they need to see that people don't come out of what they come out of by themselves all the time. Sometimes it takes a lot. And a lot is way more than some other people can bear. So
I'm
gonna take my hat off.
I
to
take,
you.
I put the crown on as I talk about who rules your kingdom. And I had to make a decision. I was going to let Christ rule my kingdom. And that's why I used the crown, because through him, I'm a child of God, and that gives me the permission. It makes me royalty. But see, your gift is still living because he's sitting right here.
Yeah.
And your gift is still living because of everybody that's being touched, including myself. I had to hear your story while I was incarcerated. That young lady right there is attending a church that you attend because of your story. You were that seed.
Mhm.
You were that seed. So that's how things start. So Christ is using both of you.
Let me just say how good God is, because Debbie would preach to me and I would reject it. And then one day the Lord told her, stop preaching to him and just love him. And she said, God, I can't love him the way he is, because I was mean. I would come home and be mean to her.
I could probably see that.
And the Lord said, stop preaching and just love him. And she said, I can't love him the way he is. You'll have to give me your eyes to see him through. Somehow, supernaturally, God gave Debbie his eyes to see me, because 1 Corinthians 13 says love never fails. Well, she loved me unconditionally. No matter what I did, the worse I treated her, the more she loved me. I mean, I can tell you stories of things that was just nuts. And she wouldn't quit love. I had a guy that I sold a lot of cocaine to, and I went to his house one day and he said, hey, Bill, your wife called. And I'm like, my wife called? What do you mean my wife called? I said, what did she want? He said, she just said to tell you she loves you. And he said, why don't you go see that woman, man? And I'm like, why don't you shut up? I ain't going to. But I drove away from her tormented. How could she love me? How could she love me? And it was God's love through her. It wasn't her love. It was his love through her.
I prayed a lot. Lord, okay, we're losing the vision here,
No,
because
this is God's story.
when you're in the
Yes.
natural, I mean,
Yes.
you're right there and there, and it was really easier to pray when he was gone, because then I could, not see with my eyes, but when he would come home, then I would see. In fact, one time he came home, it was after he caught the case and he was facing 15 to life. And he was wearing the same clothes he wore weeks before. And another time he came, his feet were swelled because he'd never taken his shoes off. It was just terrible. And, I kept asking the Lord after he told me I had to see him through his eyes. I'd go, oh, I need to see, let me see again. Because he already saw him done. He already saw the end, William, and there would be times like he would come home and he'd just be talking to me, and he'd reach down and pet my cat. Well, he hated my cat. And my cat got a little bit of abuse from him. But he would reach down without even thinking and pet my cat. And while he was talking to me, and the Lord, he would say, there I am.
Oh.
There I am. So it was little things like that kept you going.
Girl, keep giving me chill bumps.
I know, me too. But it's your awareness and your commitment and everything in that moment to see and to hear clearly in those moments. And then it was your attachment to truth, right? Because to me, what you're speaking, and thank you for sharing so vulnerably, both of you, you're speaking on really being the change regardless, which is what I speak on every month here in the Metro. Because being the change regardless means I don't care what you're going through. I don't care what you've been through. I don't care what you're scared of stepping into. You make a choice right now.
Yeah.
Truth or illusion. Because when we're out of truth, we're living in an illusion. And so I like to, take that power. And then I say, then you take truth. Once you can acknowledge truth, you acknowledged what was within all of us. It was within him. No one's different. Like Pastor said earlier today, he doesn't separate anybody. So you held on to that truth that you knew. And then you paused and talked about when you get your space. Pause, breathe, and use that truth to take the next best step with his guidance. And you can never go wrong. I mean, you're hearing one beautiful testimony on that. And it's just about making that choice. Stop making the excuses. And your story is never going to be sad enough, or you're not going to be the worst guy we've ever met or anything, or maybe you are, but you know what? We know that truth is that you're a servant of God. You're here with a grander purpose. It's just a matter of awakening to that.
And had you not went through what you went through, you wouldn't be here doing now.
Wouldn't have a story
That's
to
right.
tell.
That's
Diamond
right.
in the rough.
Yeah.
That's the crazy thing about it is diamonds are produced how?
Pressure.
And heat and darkness. It ain't just pressure. It's a whole lot of other stuff that come along with it. And you guys went through it. And see, you went through it. You went through it blindly. And that's why that question that I wanted to ask you earlier was, what happened? Because a lot of people don't realize what happens. When was that moment where you actually wanted to, because you had a Christian upbringing, why did you lose it? What made you lose the sight before you even knew that, you were stepping away from glory? What was that point?
Chuck,
Yeah.
I actually, the night that I prayed, I didn't even really consider prayer, because I got to a place in my life I didn't believe there was a God because of some of the things I was doing for money. I mean, I was paid to do things, and some of the things I did, I thought if there was a God, I couldn't do that. He wouldn't let me do that, because I did believe in God at one time. And then I'd gone through some bad things in life that had caused me to, just turn my back. And, the scripture that says, if your house is swept clean and you let the devil back in, it's 7 times worse. Well, mine was 70 times 7. it was 490 times worse. I mean, it was way worse than anything I could even imagine that I could do. And that's why I got to a place that there was a God. I couldn't be this way if there was really a God. So that night when I prayed, I was in an old house. I was out on bond. I was getting ready to go to prison. I'd spent $80,000 on an attorney in 1982. A lot of
$1
money.
million now.
Yeah, and I was told there was no way out. Matter of fact, I went to a guy that was very powerful in the state, and he said, "Bill, I can take your money, but I'm not going to take your money because that wouldn't be right. You save your money and give it to me. Once you get sentenced, I'll make sure you get to a good penitentiary. But I can't help you. You're going to prison." And that was my deal. So I was still dealing. I was still running hard, staying away from her, all the stuff I was doing.
And the house you were staying in was another drug dealer's house.
Right.
So it wasn't the perfect setting.
Right.
Get away from it. Yeah.
But anyway, I went to bed one night and I remember going up the steps and I was looking at the wallpaper on the wall of this old house I was in, and the wallpaper, and I thought, this place looks like I feel. It's old, it's falling apart, you know. I wasn't 40 yet, I was 39, but I had 200 years of life on me. I like to speak in churches and ask, how many of you believe in miracles? I did it Friday
Not too long ago.
Friday night. I was in a little church and I did that. And I said, how many of you believe in miracles? And every hand went up. I said, I don't believe in miracles. And they all went. I said, I rely on miracles because 8 specific times in my life I should have died, 8 times. And that night I was laying there, and you put on a radio where you didn't get real good reception. And it's like you have to really just touch the dial easy to get it to come in. I had it on some good rock and roll, and it would go, and then they'll hear this preacher going, no matter what you've done, God loves you. And I'm going, man, I don't want to hear that. Go back to my rock and roll. And then it goes back, Jesus will forgive no matter what you've done. And I'm like, and 3 times it happened. And I was like, what in the world? And then I think I had an open vision. I don't know if I've ever had one since. I've had a lot of, dreams, but not an open vision. And I saw literally some of the times I should have died. And it wasn't like, for instance, one time I'd been gone for weeks. I came home on a brand new motorcycle. She always wanted to be with me. No matter where, if I was going to do a dope deal, she'd go with me until finally the Lord told her to stop going. Because I'd take her on a dope deal. I'd stop at an adult bookstore and say, I'm going to go in and watch some dirty movies. You want to go in with me? And I knew she wouldn't. And she'd sit in our car for an hour and read the Bible while I'm in there watching porn. And I just treat her like that all the time. So she finally, the Lord told her, quit going with me. But I came home, I had riding a brand new motorcycle. I said, you want to go for a ride? She's like, oh yeah. She wanted to just go with me. So we took off. And I won't tell you the roads because nobody probably know where they're at anyway. But we went down and we were going up this big hill, and I saw this deer come out of the woods. And I was going about maybe 50. And I saw this deer and I thought, that deer's going to come across the highway, but I can get by it. And so I downshifted the car, the bike, and I was going probably 65. And all of a sudden we went sideways into the gravel from the middle of the highway. Into the gravel. I kept the bike up for maybe 100 yards, got back on the road. She's screaming. I'm yelling at her to shut up because she's real sensitive. She sees an animal get hit. She wants to stop and help it. And I thought she was screaming because this deer had hit us. And I'm like, shut up. That thing almost killed us. And then I looked back and her leg was sticking straight out. The deer had kicked her in the knee and drove us off the highway. And her leg was sticking out. And so I took her to the hospital. And that was another time that she found out about the power of Jesus, because she was pretty new saved and she felt like she was going to pass out on the bike, and she kept going, Jesus.
Because
Jesus.
normally before he delivered me of anxiety attacks,
Right.
one of my symptoms was I would hyperventilate and pass out when I was having them.
Oh,
So be on the back of a motorcycle
In pain.
And I'm
You don't wanna
praying
pass out
and
back there.
praising all the way. And it was like, by the time we got to the hospital, of course I didn't, it was just bruised bad, but I was so in awe that God didn't have me pass out.
But she was going, Jesus, Jesus,
If she would have
Jesus.
passed out, she would have let go.
And he was giving her strength, you know. So I go the next day and I'm around my partners and they're like, Bill, you're going 65 on a highway and a deer hits you and knocks you into the gravel and you keep the bike up for 100 yards and get back on the highway and don't turn over. How'd you do that? And I said, I'm a good
Jesus
bike
did
rider,
it.
man.
Jesus
How do you
did
think
it.
I did it? I'm a good bike rider. Another time I flipped the van 6 times in over in and rolled it down the hill. I don't know how many times. Every piece of glass was gone. 3 of the wheels and tires were ripped off. The lug nuts were still on. Every piece of metal was gone. The van looked like it got hit by a train. I took my 75-year-old mom down to see it. A week later, they had it in a place and I took her down to see the van. She said, Bill, don't you see, honey, God has his hand on you. And I looked at my mom. I said, Mom, God has nothing to do with that. I'm a good driver.
Oh my goodness.
Now, how do you
He was
drive going end
hardcore.
over end and
Right.
sideways roll, you know? But I always took the credit. So that night, the Lord began to show me in this vision some of the times I had 2 heart attacks from doing cocaine. I've had multiple overdoses. I've been in riots in prisons. I've been different times that I should have died. And he began to show me it wasn't because you were tough. Because my nickname in the streets was Superman. Because I was big and strong and everybody called me Superman. Well, I thought I was Superman. I thought I was indestructible. I was bulletproof. Nothing could touch me. And when I didn't die in a car wreck or a motorcycle wreck, I've been in 25 car wrecks in my life. And every time I
You
didn't
said you're a
die,
good driver?
I thought, yeah, good point,
And you
Chuck.
would say, trust me. And I
Yeah,
would
good point,
believe.
Chuck. Don't tell my insurance agent. But all this, the Lord showed me, not every time, but he showed me some of those real serious ones where I should have died. And he said it was because I loved you. And so that night, rock and roll, Jesus love, rock and roll, God will forgive you no matter what you've done, all that. That night after the little movie I saw for a couple minutes, not even probably 30 seconds, I don't know, it was quick. I said, if there's a God and you're real and you can change Bill Corum, I'll live my life for you. I didn't even consider that a prayer. I didn't realize it was scriptural because the Bible says those that call upon the name of the Lord will be saved.
That's right.
But I went home, I called her the next day, and I didn't go anywhere without a gun. I always carried 2 pistols on me everywhere I went, sometimes an Uzi in a briefcase. Always had a gun.
Oh my goodness.
And I went home and didn't have a gun, didn't even think about a gun. I went and I stayed home for a week, which was another miracle because I hadn't been home like 7 months. I was in and out, you know, when I wanted to go. And I stayed home a week. And if you read the book, you know the story's coming. I slept for a month. You know, a lot of people coming off drugs come in our program here, they'll sleep a week. They'll give them a week to sleep it off, you know. I slept for a month. And she'd go to work and sleep all day. And, you know, well, this day, 1 week after I prayed that prayer, 1 week to the day, all day, all I could think about was, you haven't done any drugs in a week. Now, where do you think that thought was coming from? You're going to die. You're going to die. You haven't done any drugs in a week. Because I did drugs 24/7. I'd go 8 days and never shut my eyes. That's why I'd come home, my ankles would be this big because I'd check into a $500 a night hotel and never sit down.
Let me interject something. He came home, when he came home after he prayed that prayer, he came home and that's when he told me he had recommitted his life to Jesus. And so he was living as a Christian, sleeping all the time, but you had committed your life to Christ.
But I didn't tell you that till I came back from race.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Right. So I didn't talk about it. I just slept, didn't say anything, didn't think about guns, didn't say nothing to her, just stayed home a week. And then she's at work with the car. I left my car down there. She came and got me. And she comes home from work and I'm pacing the floor all day. Like I got to go do some drugs. I'm going to die. Literally, I'm going to die if I don't get some drugs.
Mhm.
That's all I could think. So I know that wasn't God. So she comes, as soon as she pulled the drive, I met her in the yard. I said, give me your keys. I'm going. She said, where are you? I said, I haven't done any drugs in a week. She said, I know. I said, give me the keys. So I got in the car and left. And I don't know what she was thinking, but I went to this guy's house that I sold drugs to. And he said, hey, man, I said, give me some Give me some cocaine out, give me a couple joints, I'm gonna
Get the
get.
menu out.
So I rolled this joint that was so tacky, full of tar, you couldn't even get it lit. And while I'm looking at it going, that I am gonna get so high. It was like smoking a camel. I didn't feel nothing. Then I did the cocaine and I didn't feel nothing. And I got mad at him. I said, "Where'd you get this junk?" He said, "Bill, it's your drug." And then I really got mad. I said, it's not my drugs. I got the best drugs in Kansas City.
Yeah.
And he's like, "No, it's yours." And I'm like, "You're crazy." And he was freaking out. And I just run out the door. And he said, "You all right, man?" And I left. I got in the car, her car, turned the radio on to hear me some rock and roll. And she had Christian music on. And the minute I heard it, the very minute that I heard it, God said, "You haven't had a gun in a week and you're not scared." Because I told my partner a couple years earlier, I said, Charlie's dead, so I can use his name. I said, "Charlie, what year is this?" He said, 1980. I said, "Right, it's not 1880. I can't go out the house without 2 pistols on me. This is not 1880. It's 1980. But I wouldn't go out without, and here I've been a week and no gun. And as soon as I heard the music, "You haven't had a gun in a week and you're not scared." And I'm like, And then I just started driving toward the house. And when I pulled in, she was at the kitchen sink, never forget it. I said, "Debbie, I got to tell you something." She said, "What?" I said, "A week ago today, I asked God if he could change me, I'd live for him." And she turned around and she was tears straight. I said, then I wasn't that saved, Chuck. I said, "What are you crying about?"
He didn't say it mean.
No, but I didn't like it when she cried. I said, "What are you crying about?" She's like, "Bill, I knew something had changed you because every day this week you woke up happy. And I've never seen you wake up because nobody else ever saw me wake up happy. Because in my whole life, I didn't like the sun to come up. I didn't like daylight. I woke up, I was not happy." And she said, "Every day this week you woke up happy and you haven't kicked my cat in a week."
That was a major deal.
That was a major, when I tell that in prisons, everybody laughs. And I go, "Guys, that's not funny."
Right, it's not.
Because she loves cats and I was a cat. You can edit this. I drive 100 miles to kill a cat. Literally. If I had $25,000 in my pocket and you called me and said, "I got a cat I want killed," I'd drive 100 miles to kill your cat. And now I haven't kicked the cat. Now guess what, Chuck? I stick with the cat.
Say how many cats
She
you
says
have.
it's God's judgment on.
We just put our last 17-year-old down. So right now,
We don't have a cat.
until
But we
August.
will in August. We'll
In
have a cat.
August, we're going to foster our granddaughter's cat while she goes to college.
Very nice.
Yes.
But so
Amazing.
the amount of change God can make. I'll tell you one more quick thing, and I'm done. You guys ask questions. I went to Africa in 1987 with 10 men from our church. We were walking on a path. I didn't even know why God had me there. I'm walking on this path, and these 9 guys there was 10 of us. 9 guys were in front of me a little ways, and I almost stepped on a grasshopper. And I reached down and picked it up and kind of just went like this. And out of my peripheral vision, you know how they fly, some grasshoppers? He flew into a water puddle. And I said, "Hey guys, hold up." And I ran over and I got him out of the water and set him in the grass. I ran and caught up with the guys. They said, "What were you doing back there, Bill?" And I said, "I didn't want that grasshopper to drown." And I started crying. And they said, "What's wrong, Bill?" And I said, 4 years ago, I would kill a man for money. And today I don't want a bug to die. And I knew that only God could do that. There's no way in the world that I could change like that. Only God could change my heart to where I don't want a bug die in life.
You'll speed up to hit a cat.
Yeah, I don't want to go there, but
Don't go there.
anyway, God changed my heart, and he took my heart. That day in Africa is when I took the scripture that says he'll take your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh. And I realized that very day that he did that. And that was really the whole purpose for me going to Africa. I felt like at that time was for him to take my heart of stone and give me a heart of flesh.
Or do you want to be the person that soothes, that loves? Because you can still stand tall and be as big as you want to be when you are this person.